The horror movie that scared the living daylights out of Nishi is back. Based on the Japanese manga of the same name and directed by top horror master Shiraishi Shoji, this unfortunate film is not only innovative in form, but it also gives the viewer a sense of immersion in a bizarre yet realistic plot, making it one of the best horror movies of the year. His father buys a cheap villa and takes over the family, but the happy couple doesn't know why such a beautiful villa is being sold at such a low price. The reason is simple: it's a haunted mansion. On the first night, the TV in Sawashio's sister's room turns on in the middle of the night. At first, Shizuko thinks she's accidentally pressed the remote control, so she turns it off, but then she lies down and a fat ghostly shadow appears on the floor, and she sees it. A fat ghost. Shizuko was not physically hurt that night, but she had been feeling weak since morning. Her family thought that she was too excited about moving to her new home, and that she hadn't rested last night. But it wasn't only Mirror who was atrocious. Sausage was dozing off in class, too. It's very strange because they've never met before, so she asks why she's there. The girl just says something strange and runs away, leaving Sausage confused. At night, the TV in Mirror's room turns on again. She tries to turn it off, but the remote control malfunctions. At that moment, a strange ghostly figure flies out of the window, and Mirror is frightened. 1. After that, he never dared to take a step out of the room from that moment. Onwards he grabbed his wrist. Mirror's son stood beside the staircase with his head tilted and wanted to go to the toilet. Toshihiro ran over to ask him what he was doing when he saw him, but Mirror's son suddenly grabbed Toshihiro's head and smashed it against a pillar. Jun cried so hard that when he heard the cries, Sawatsuo quickly ran over to comfort his younger brother, while Mirror's son still stood still when Sawatsuo called out Shizuko. He did not say anything but lifted his head up and smashed it into the pillar. It was only when his forehead was bleeding that he came back to his senses, but by the time he did, he looked so confused that he could hardly remember what had just happened. By this time, the whole family had gathered around, except for the old, demented nurse, who saw in the mirror a fat ghostly figure standing behind her, but when she turned back to look at it, the ghostly figure had disappeared, and was no longer to be seen. The next night, his father, fearing that his daughter might have been sleepwalking again, came quietly to her room, but found that she was still standing there, and was still in a daze. Late one night, as he watched TV, his father went to wake his daughter. Stepping into her once tidy room, he found it a mess, with snack wrappers strewn across the floor. Just as he questioned if he was hallucinating, a fat ghost appeared, wielding a crooked stick, and struck him. The next morning, Sasha's mother discovered her husband dead in their daughter's room. The forensic pathologist concluded it was a heart attack, leaving the family unaware of the haunting, except for sister Yasuko. Since her father's death, she'd heard strange noises. One day, she saw ghostly hands on the doorframe and a long-haired woman peering at her. Terrified, she locked the door and refused to leave the house. On the other hand, when he learns of his father's death, Judah comes to comfort him and tells him that he has the eye of yin and yang, and the last time he saw him, he saw that his body was tainted with yin aura, and that's why he reminded him to be careful. No matter how much the family tried to persuade him, he just wouldn't stop. Only when the milk appeared, the master stood up and walked towards him with a smile. Then, he suddenly collapsed and died of a heart attack, just like his father. But since the family didn't want to believe in hauntedness, Zhe Xiong went to ask Zhu Tian to help him. He took Zhe Xiong's palms and then stared at him with his eyes fixed on his face. The next second, Zhu Tian's soul passed through Zhe Xiong's house, and then there was the sound of a strange laugh in his ear. Zhu Tian raised his eyes. When she discovers that the ghost has fallen asleep in front of her, her soul is instantly frightened back into her body. This is the first time that Zhu Tian has encountered such a powerful evil spirit, and he warns Suksun that if he doesn't move out of the house, the whole family may be in danger. Before he can grieve, Seo sees his sister, who has been locked up in her room all day, swinging a baseball bat at him. Seo is so scared that he keeps dodging and dodging. When he can easily grab the bat, Kariko runs into the kitchen and gets a fruit knife. When his son and daughter died horribly in front of his eyes, he didn't react and even complained to Sawashio, saying that he was too tired. When Sawashio realized that something was wrong and rushed into the room, his mother had strangled herself with a socket cord. 3 of his relatives died in front of him. Sawashio was already in a meltdown, but at that moment, he also heard a strange laugh. At that moment, a ray of sunlight enters the bedroom and another figure walks towards the bed, not only overturning it, but also kicking it aside. By now, the female ghost has disappeared and is nowhere to be seen. Xiong realizes that the person standing across the room is his milkmaid, who has miraculously regained consciousness under the female ghost's provocation. Since the old family member was not only irascible, but also an excellent martial artist when she was young, she is not only not afraid of the female ghost, she is also willing to avenge the deaths of her family members. After she buried her family, she explained to Zishong that if they wanted to keep their vitality, even the most terrifying ghosts would avoid them, so now he had to train his frail grandson to boost his aura. Zishong agreed with her wisdom, so he followed her guidance, ate meals regularly, exercised diligently, and then began practicing Tai Chi under her supervision. Ever since they started boxing, the female ghost has not appeared again. However, Nana is unwilling to let the matter rest. In her husband's dream, Nana takes Sukhong and unearths her school bag and a skull from the yard, which are clearly the ghost's relics. As the students write Sayuri's name in the usual manner, she decides to get revenge once she discovers the ghost's origin. Instead of feeling afraid, she actually had the boldness to step into the kitchen and give Sayuri a firm scolding. The plump version of Sayuri appeared before her, and she proceeded to give her another blowjob, then passed through her body without a single scratch, and eventually returned to the table unharmed. After pondering for quite some time, he finally found the perfect words, which not only made her laugh but also rendered Sayuri unable to listen, causing her to vanish on the spot. Witnessing that she had managed to drive the evil spirits out of her life, Sayuri's confidence grew. Nevertheless, Sayuri was not willing to give up, and whenever she had the opportunity, she pulled her into an illusion, forcing her to witness her husband being knocked to death repeatedly, in a manner designed to shatter her heart. She did not realize that this tactic would not work on her and that she had already found out the cause of Sayuri's death through her private detective. She then told Zishong that she was going on a trip and would not be back until late. But when she realizes that the milk is not at home, Sayuri starts to scare Sawashio, who is watching TV, but Sawashio isn't scared at all. But while Sawashio is so pleased with herself, Sayuri turns off all the lights in the house, and then she lets Toshi, who has died, fall down from the building once more. Sawashio's heart isn't as strong as the milk's, and she breaks down right away. As she throws herself to the ground and cries loudly, she's suddenly awakened by the rushing Jakuta. Original. Shu Tian senses that something could happen to Zishong, so he rushes to his rescue. According to Zhu Tian, if he escapes from the villa, the female ghost's powers will be weakened. However, Zishong insists that her mental powers surpass the ghost's, so she doesn't need to hide. Immediately after, the fat version of Sayuri appears before him, raising her warped stick to smash him to death. Fortunately, he's much more agile these days, allowing him to dodge the blow swiftly before dashing into the open. Just then, Nana drives back to the car and notices the crying Sawashio. She's so furious that she approaches him, slaps him, and demands to know what's happening. When she learns that Jakuta has been captured, she remains calm, because she holds Sayuri's leverage to negotiate a deal with him. After opening the trunk, Sausage was absolutely stunned. She had never imagined that she would be in a situation where she would kidnap her own mother. The three individuals were not just Sayuri's relatives, they were also, according to the private detective, the actual murderers. When the three of them refused to reveal the truth, the furious nurse took the axe and broke the man's leg, then smashed it against Sayuri's sister. At this critical moment, Sayuri's mother finally confessed that they had indeed killed her. She said she would go to the police station to turn herself in. Upon hearing that, Nurse Mui Xingcheng, in a fit of rage, gave her an axe on the spot. The truth of what happened was that Sayuri had been a poltergeist since childhood, but she had never expected to be abused by her own father, and her mother, aware of what was happening, had chosen to ignore it, allowing her husband to abuse her over and over again. Eventually, unable to bear it, Sayuri had to shut herself up in her room, losing her hair and eating and drinking, and at her mother's behest, she became a fat, pulling child. At this point, Sayuri finally had the strength to take revenge, so she decided to use the prying bar she had prepared to take revenge on her parents, but unexpectedly she was killed by her parents and her younger sister together, and from then on, she turned into a knight to take revenge on everyone living in the villa, and after finding out the truth, Nanny decided to give these three scums to Sayuri to deal with, on the condition that she would let Judah go and then poke out the blinding eyes of her mother, who had always been secretly taking care of her, and that Sayuri would not be able to see them, but she would be able to take revenge by using the prying bar. Sayuri decides to spare her life, but after doing so, Sayuri doesn't release Judah, which infuriates Nurse. She and Zhixiong immediately assume a Tai Chi stance, intending to beat Sayuri to death, but Sayuri's vengeance increases her strength, and in a single round, she beats her to death, spitting blood out of her mouth. An enraged Zhixiong decides to replenish herself with food, and then chews Sayuri's skull and swallows it. Sensing that Zhixiong's strength has increased, Sayuri opens her mouth and throws out countless tentacles. She intends to drag Zhixiong into her body, but instead, Zhixiong rushes in and saves Yu Tian. By now, the milk has also regained her strength and is ready to take on Sayuri again. Finally, with a Tai Chi fist, she breaks up her fat and resentful frame and returns to being the innocent, kind-hearted girl she used to be. Sawashio's deceased family swirled behind Sayuri, taking him. The grandmother, now senile, lost her luck. Sayuri killed her father and sister, all died like Sawashio's family, of heart attacks. Her blind mother confessed to the police, admitting they killed her daughter to protect the family from evil spirits. The villa was razed, but destroying the murder house was hard on those involved. That's today's story. Subscribe for more interesting horror videos. See you next time.